My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to my husband James for 2 years, and I've recently become a full-time homemaker after experiencing childbirth for the first time. Despite the struggles I face due to postpartum, the cuteness of my angelic son makes all my fatigue vanish. I can't help but gush. He has pure, adorable eyes. I bet he'll grow up to be a handsome boy. I'm already head over heels as a proud mother. However, despite my happiness, I have a problem. It's the presence of my mother-in-law Olivia, who visits us almost daily. My in-laws live about a 30-minute walk away. Olivia started coming over to support me postpartum, as a substitute for my busy James and my parents who live far away. Although her help would normally be appreciated, she does little to actually assist me. Instead, she just lounges on our sofa, watching her Korean soap opera DVDs that she brings along. She's more of a burden than a help, expecting me to serve her tea and fetch her tissues. She was the one who offered to help, but what is she here for exactly? I have tried telling her, "I'm fine, you can go home." But I ended up getting an earful from James later that night. Undoubtedly, Olivia complained to him about being sent away. Even though I asked him to stop because our son was crying, James still snapped at me. He's a real mama's boy. I wish I could go back in time and punch my past self for not noticing this before we got married. He insists that I replicate his mother's recipes and even tries to make me dress more like her. No matter what I say, James worships his mother as if she's a goddess. No matter what I say, James worships his mother as if she's a goddess. We don't need to rely on your mom. It would help so much if you could just help me out a little. What? I work all day and I'm exhausted. Besides, I bet the baby is happier when you take care of him. Even when I'm talking to him, his eyes are always glued to the TV or his phone, showing no sign of being engaged in the conversation. Does he not care about our son? I'm just as exhausted as he is. With my eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, fatigue, and stress, I glare at him. Don't you dare complain to my dad. He's also busy and won't tolerate any unnecessary drama. For a moment, he turned his gaze to me, and James spoke as if to warn me. My father-in-law Ethan is nearing retirement, but still works a lot. I know he is busy. However, it would be a great comfort if he, who treats me like his daughter, could say something to James or Olivia. As I recall my conversations with James, Olivia's inconsiderate voice snaps me back to reality. Emily, the baby is fussing. Hurry up and soothe him down. It's the fun part of the drama now. She calls, not taking her eyes off the TV screen. I stop folding the laundry to attend to my son. As I pass the back of my engrossed Olivia, I stick my tongue out at her in my mind. Being worn out from children and sleep deprivation, her presence, doing nothing but hanging around, has become a major source of stress for me. However, it has nothing to do with my son. If James is not willing to help, then I am the only one left for my son. Well, I should get going, she finally says when the clock strikes 5. She quickly gets up from the sofa, uses my dressing table as if it's her own, fixes her makeup perfectly, and goes out into the Twilight City. Apparently, she is taking dance classes for her health and to maintain her beauty. From the time we met to discuss our wedding, she would brag saying, "I used to be a model, so it's a habit for me to stay presentable. Thanks to that, people always think I'm younger than I actually am. It's a pain." She is 58, but admittedly, she does look younger than her age. That being said, if she's going to classes this late, she should just go during the day, instead of wasting time at my house. Grandma doesn't do anything, does she? As I spoke to my son in my arms, he was soundly asleep, gently breathing. An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Ethan. Having been thoroughly tired of Olivia's behavior for days on end, I ignored James's advice and had been secretly discussing the matter with Ethan over the phone. Ethan wanted to see his grandson's face, so he had made time out of his busy schedule to come and visit us. Looking at my sleeping son, Ethan, whose expression was softer than James's, chuckled. "He's so adorable." "So, she left in the evening today for her dance class without helping out around the house again today?" Ethan sighed as he looked around the mess in my house. Guessing from his response, it seemed he just found out about his wife attending dance classes. Seeing the state of the house, he must have realized that his wife really hadn't been helping out at all. Ethan bowed his head and apologized to me. "It's not your fault," I rushed to say, but he shook his head. "My wife herself said she would support you, Emily, but I'll see to it that she doesn't come here from tomorrow. And I understand my son may not be much of a help, but if there's anything you need, let me know anytime." "Thank you so much," I responded gratefully. It seemed that Ethan was also worried about James's lack of interest in housework and childcare. For the first time in a long time, I felt the touch of kindness, and it brought tears to my eyes. About 3 months have passed since Ethan started visiting us. Thanks to him, Olivia has stopped coming to our house. My mood has been brighter ever since. I never knew I could feel this relieved just by her not coming. My son has even been able to hold up his hand now, and I've been able to spare a little more time for housework. "Oh, it's a mess again," I sighed as I spotted the state of my half-open James's room. Dirty shirts and socks were scattered all over the floor. I threw them into the laundry basket and decided to sweep the floor while I was at it. As I shoved the cleaning tool under the bed, I felt something was off. Did I hit something? As I maneuvered the cleaning tool, a clear file slid out, with a bank book inside. "Gosh, he's such a slob," I muttered. I picked up the bank book and set it on James's desk, and suddenly my breath hitched. I realized it was not James's bank book, but the one we'd set up for our son. Why was our son's bank book in James's room when I always kept it somewhere else? Currently, the only money in the account was the generous amount gifted from my parents and Ethan for the birth of our son. It was a considerable amount, saved for our son's future. A sense of dread crept over me as I tentatively opened the bank book. All the money in it was withdrawn. Out of impulse, I opened James's desk drawer and pulled out his bank book. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't stop myself. "Just as I thought," I muttered. Opening James's bank book, I found that the entire bonus he'd just received was withdrawn. Moreover, the remaining balance was too low. My mind went blank. Even as I heard my son crying in the distance, I was too stunned to rush to him as I usually would. A few hours later, when James came back from work, I confronted him. He was initially angry that I had entered his room and looked through his things, but eventually confessed. "I was financially helping my mother." "What? Why would you need to support your mother? And I can't believe you do something like this without telling me. You even dipped into our child's savings. This is not okay." James angrily thumped his desk as I confronted him. "Look, I only helped out 'cause my mom said she was struggling, okay? She's probably got problems we know nothing about. Besides, it's my hard-earned money. If you have so many complaints, maybe we should just get a divorce," he grumbled. Our son, who had been gently snoring in his crib, woke up and started crying. James argued with me and disturbed our son's sleep. I hurried over to him and lifted him up in my arms. "The money you earned? The money in the account was a generous gift from our parents. For our son, you can't claim it. Both your dad and my parents gifted us thinking about our son's future. Don't you feel guilty at all? And I'd appreciate it if you stopped mentioning divorce so thoughtlessly, I retorted. Watching our son, now cradled in my arms and calming down from his tears, James snorted with a look of annoyance. Then he presented a sheet of paper on the desk. It was a divorce paper, and his section was already filled out. I was shocked and my eyes widened in surprise. I wouldn't mind getting a divorce any time, to be honest. But you wouldn't want to be struggling financially, burdened with a newborn baby, he said, seemingly thinking this would shut me up. My feelings started to recede at James's childish behavior. That's when I realized something. He had never once held our son. Seeing me silent, James laughed, almost as if he was certain of his upper hand. So, from now on, please pay the living expenses from your own pocket, he added nonchalantly, tapping my shoulder before leaving the room. As the living room door closed, I sank to the floor, exhausted. Tears naturally flowed down my cheeks. My son, nestled in my arms, stretched out his little hand to me and giggled innocently. I had made up my mind. The next day, I submitted the paper he'd handed me to the city hall. Afterwards, I got on an Amtrak train. I left a note saying, "I'll submit the divorce papers and will be claiming alimony and reimbursement for the money you used, along with my wedding ring." I was concerned about taking our newborn baby outside, but he seemed intrigued by the new surroundings and was fortunately in a good mood. I braced myself to take extra care of his health. I was headed to my parents' house in Michigan. I only brought essentials for our son and a few of my valuables, so I didn't have much luggage. My parents, having been informed the previous night, were ready to welcome us. After hearing about James and his mother's actions, they were enraged. But they smiled kindly and suggested that I help them with their family business and raise my son here. My parents ran a fruit farm. It was a tough job, but I had helped out since I was a kid and had some experience and knowledge. I began to think that it might not be so bad. The next day, while I was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, my phone rang. It was Olivia. Reluctantly, I answered the call. "Emily, what the hell is this about?" The moment I put the phone to my ear, a shrill scream pierced through. Somewhat irked, I replied, "Who are you?" "Huh?" Taken aback by my nonchalant response, Olivia stuttered. Feigning recollection, I exaggeratedly said, "Oh, is it you, Olivia? I'd completely forgotten about you since I've already divorced your son." My somewhat light-hearted reply seemed to shake her. "Emily, do you realize what you've done? Acting so selfishly." I assumed James had run to her, not expecting me to really go through with the divorce. It made sense that she was panicked enough to call. Selfish? "I think the problem lies with your son, who presented me with a signed divorce agreement as a threat. Though it worked out just fine for me," I responded calmly. She didn't seem to understand. "I'll forgive you for this. Get married to my son. He's so upset, he's crying right now." I wondered if he was still by her side. The image of James watching me talk on the phone with Olivia, tears welling up in his eyes, sent a chill down my spine. At the same time, I was utterly speechless at his determination to somehow get his mother to intervene. Enough is enough. I don't need a mama's boy for a James, or Olivia who spends her nights in male strip clubs. Huh? Olivia choked on her words from the other end of the phone. How do you know that? It was clear she reacted to the mention of the gentleman's club. This happened last night. After James left the living room, I pulled out my phone. One call was to my parents, to tell them I planned on divorcing and coming home. The other was to Ethan, to whom I owe gratitude and an apology, to explain the situation. That's when Ethan revealed everything to me. The reason Olivia had been practically living at our house was to visit a male strip club that opened at 6 p.m. There were various reasons she stayed at our place during the day, the first being our house was closer to the club than hers. Plus, by spending her days at our place, she could avoid chores at her own place. She also used me and our son as her excuse to get back home late. All this worked in Olivia's favor. Apparently, she had taken quite a fancy to one of the dancers at the club and had been spending a lot on him. It was hard to believe that Olivia, who had always been a homemaker, had any money of her own. And she couldn't even drink alcohol because of her low intolerance. She had been withdrawing money from the bank account Ethan maintained, buying drinks for the dancers, while sipping sodas herself. Ethan had been suspicious of Olivia after I asked about her. Despite being forbidden from coming to our house, Olivia continued to find reasons to go out for a while. Realizing something was off, he followed her and discovered she had been a regular at a strip club. He was deeply shocked to find out about her escapades and the misuse of his bank account. To think she'd even take money from our son and grandson. If only I'd found out sooner. I am deeply sorry, Emily, and to my grandson as well. The gravity of Ethan's guilt and apologies over the phone, having learned about our situation, was overwhelming. You lied to James for money because she didn't have enough to lavish on those entertainers, didn't you? Olivia remained silent at my accusation. I could hear James's voice over the phone saying, "Mom, tell me that this is all a lie." It seemed he had been listening after all. After a moment of silence, Olivia erupted in anger. Don't use such vulgar words like lavish. I'm just showing Chris my affection. He loves it when I visit him. Chris must be her favorite dancer's name. I sighed at Olivia's pathetic outburst. The thought of my son's money being spent on her entertainment boiled my blood again. Neither Ethan nor I will let this slide. You better be ready, ma'am. I ended the call and switched off my phone. A few days later, I received a call from James, who made a sincere apology about the misuse of money and his mother's actions. Regarding the divorce papers, he admitted that it was only on his mother's insistence, saying, "If she bothers you, just show her the divorce papers. She'll stop bothering you." And he wasn't serious about it. He was deeply regretful about being fooled by his mother, who he trusted unconditionally, and eventually driving us to divorce. He seemed to have finally woken up. I'm truly sorry. I've transferred $20,000 into your account as a token of my remorse, including the misused money and for the inconvenience caused. I hope this shows my sincerity. Let's start over and create a happy family. I need you, Emily, just as much as you need me. His words made my skin crawl. Reconciliation is not an option. I only need my son. From now on, I'll need child support. We can discuss this further with our lawyers. I knew that the $20,000 was the money Ethan had lent James. It was the money saved for his retirement, separate from the account Olivia had been spending from. From now on, James would have to work hard to repay his father and provide child support for our son. He'd also be under his father's surveillance. James, who believed I would be forgiving him, was in tears and apologizing, but it was too late. I said, "Goodbye," ended the call, and promptly blocked his contact. 2 months have passed since the discussion with James, facilitated by our lawyers, was completed. Right now, I'm assisting at my parents' orchard, while also dedicating myself to child rearing. After my divorce from James, I've continued to keep in touch with Ethan. Sometimes, he comes over to see my son. Through conversations with Ethan, I learned that Olivia had secretly accrued debt. Ethan, who had secretly been preparing for divorce, showed no mercy and kicked Olivia out. Now it seems James reluctantly took in his mother and they're living together. Both James and his mother are forced to work to repay the debts and are living under extreme poverty. As I look into my son's innocent eyes, I'm determined to raise him so he doesn't end up like his father or Olivia. I found a new wife, so let's get a divorce, he said, handing me the divorce papers out of nowhere. What kind of way to say it is that? I replied to Christian, visibly upset. What do you mean? Explain yourself properly. There's nothing much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is. Shalia, help me! What should I do now? Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal. Who are you? I responded calmly. Who? It's me, Christian. At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but hearing his voice made it clear. Pretending not to know him, Christian seemed quite panicked. My name is Shalia, a 46-year-old homemaker. I have a daughter, Lisa, who's 21. I live with my husband Christian, who's 4 years older, and our daughter. After finishing junior college, I got a job at a construction company. Christian, who was in sales for construction equipment, frequented my company. I was impressed by his diligent salesmanship and took a liking to him. Christian was always very energetic and had a loud voice, and although he sometimes got confused and looked at me with disdain, he left a good impression on me. When he asked me out, I quickly said yes. After several dates, we got married. Our daughter Lisa has already received a job offer. She's set to work at a financial institution starting this spring. Since it's within commuting distance from home, the three of us will continue to live together for a while. With her thesis submitted, Lisa is enjoying her last moments of student life. I felt relieved that I was finally getting a break from parenting. However, our family life hasn't been smooth sailing. Christian has damaged his liver from years of unhealthy living. He can't enjoy his favorite drinks and is on a restricted diet. Although working wasn't a problem for him, his frequent hospital visits led to many absences and lateness at work. His physical strength has significantly declined, forcing him to switch from a sales to an office position. Despite my concerns for Christian, I was overall happy. Your liver function has improved significantly. Let's continue living as usual. Recently, the hospital's test results were good. And Christian showed a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Thank you. Does that mean I can live a normal life now? The doctor responded with a smile. Yes, that's right. This is thanks to your regular diet. Your wife has done a great job. I was so happy I could barely keep a smile off my face. Despite never receiving a single word of thanks from Christian, I was on the verge of tears, holding back with a handkerchief. The doctor's acknowledgement of my efforts was incredibly gratifying and appreciated. Christian frowned in displeasure. Doctor, what are you saying? It's because I've been taking my medicine and taking care of myself, right? It seemed Christian wasn't pleased with me being praised. He complained like a child who had his credit stolen. Hearing Christian's comment deflated my happy feeling. Of course, medicine is important. But the most crucial thing for your condition is your diet. You are where you are today because of your wife. You can't thank her enough. The doctor advised Christian in an instructive tone. But it seemed Christian wasn't receptive to the doctor's words. He didn't even try to hide his displeasure. So, I quickly wrapped up. Thank you. The conversation. Back at home, Christian called his parents to share the good news. He sounded very happy then. Christian always plays the victim, unable to bear not being the center of attention. Though his illness may play a part, I thought of him as a small-minded man. Everyone at work was so pleased. They said it's because of my good deeds. You two are nothing like that. Christian came home in high spirits. Taking such flattery seriously and looking down on me and Lisa seemed truly low to me. As I was about to retort, Christian blurted out something unbelievable. They're going to throw me a recovery celebration. I can finally drink again. I doubted Christian's words. A recovery celebration? You're not fully healed. How did you explain it to everyone? Christian looked perplexed, as if he didn't understand his own situation. How? The doctor said it's okay to live a normal life, didn't he? The normal the doctor mentioned is your version of normal, not the same as a healthy person's normal. He said to continue living as you have been. Christian suddenly looked annoyed. Let's not sweat the small stuff. I know myself better than anyone. I'll be fine for a day. Indeed, Christian had been abstaining from his beloved alcohol for a long time. Then there were the recent test results. I couldn't say I didn't understand Christian's desire to drink. I was worried but decided to give in. All right. Take care. Just make sure not to eat anything high in salt and limit yourself to just a sip of alcohol for the toast. Christian must have felt victorious, showing a smile I had never seen before. Can I really go? Thank you. Just remember your promise. Yeah, I got it. Christian wasn't really listening to me. It was uncertain how much of what I said would be adhered to. Filled with anxiety, Christian ended up going to the party. That night, Christian came home in high spirits, drunk enough to need a cab ride home from a junior colleague. I thought all the effort until now had gone to waste with such heavy alcohol consumption. Afterward, Christian started attending drinking parties once a week. He didn't consult me at all. He just went on his own. Christian then started making me even more anxious. While eating dinner, Christian began to complain about the restricted diet. This is a bit bland, isn't it? It's so tasteless, I don't feel like I'm eating anything. Until now, he had never complained and even said it was delicious. His taste must have adapted to the strongly flavored food he ate at the drinking parties. At one point, Christian even brought home side dishes from a convenience store that seemed like snacks for drinking. He must have convinced himself he was cured, as others thought he was. I was overwhelmed with anxiety. This surely wasn't going to end well. I tried to warn Christian, but it was like talking to a wall. The last results were good, so it'll be fine. All I could do was sigh and hold my temples. Christian's condition didn't last long. One night, he rushed to the emergency room with severe abdominal pain and fever. The doctor's words were gravely serious. Mr. Christian, you have cirrhosis of the liver, and it's quite advanced. You were continuing with the medication and diet therapy, right? I took the medication. The diet, well. Christian awkwardly looked down. Both the doctor and I were at a loss for words. In my heart, I murmured, "It's your own fault." The doctor must have felt the same. At this point, all we can do is slow the progression and alleviate the symptoms. You also need to be careful of pancreatic cancer. Cancer! That can't be! Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? There must be another treatment option. Christian clung to the doctor, tears streaming down his face, begging for a solution. It's not that there aren't options, but Please, what is it? What's the option? It's a transplant. A living donor liver transplant. There you go, there's a treatment option. Please, go ahead with the transplant. It's not as simple as that. First, we need to find a donor. Then, here. I have one right here. Christian grabbed my arm. A transplant can't proceed without the donor's voluntary consent. I wanted Christian to be healthy. But honestly, I was scared. I couldn't immediately agree on the spot. On the other hand, Christian's eyes were shining. When do we do the tests? Sooner is better, right? Christian was already set on receiving the transplant surgery. My feelings were of no concern to him. After much thought, I decided to undergo the tests to become a donor. I was a match as a donor. Then, the surgery happened in no time. The operation was over more quickly than I had anticipated. Both Christian and I had successful surgeries. I was hospitalized for 3 weeks, and during my stay, Lisa came to the hospital and took care of me. Afterwards, she continued to visit the hospital to take care of Christian. Christian spent a few days in the ICU before being moved to a general ward, and after 3 months, he was discharged. His prognosis was good, with no complications, rejection, or signs of infection, and he was recovering smoothly. A year later, Christian returned to society and started going to the office again. He looked healthier, more vibrant, and energetic than before. I truly thought it was good that we went through with the transplant. However, my condition then started to worsen. I began to cough, experience shortness of breath and dizziness, and often couldn't stand up. Thinking it was a consequence of the surgery, I had it checked during a regular checkup, but nothing abnormal was found. After visiting various hospitals, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. Despite not smoking, I learned that lung cancer can still occur. Lung cancer doesn't have specific symptoms, which is why it was undiagnosed. Fortunately, my cancer was caught early, so I could be treated with chemotherapy and radiation. The dizziness persisted, and I had difficulty standing, leading to a wheelchair-bound life. It was then, as our roles reversed, that a serious situation occurred. Christian didn't come home one night, and I was worried something had happened, but Lisa handed me her smartphone. On the screen was a photo of Christian happily drinking at a pub with his coworkers. This was 10 minutes ago, Lisa said with a look of disbelief. I was flabbergasted. Despite having had a liver transplant just a year ago, it seemed Christian had no awareness of being ill. How much trouble he had caused the family due to this lack of awareness. I worried for nothing. Let's just go to sleep. However, Christian didn't come home that day. He didn't return the next morning either, so I called his smartphone. He didn't answer but sent a message instead. The message said he had left divorce papers in the bedroom for me to file. Shocked, I dropped the smartphone to the floor. I called Lisa loudly and asked her to check Christian's bedroom. Lisa came down looking pale. "Mom, this," she said, holding a piece of paper. Taking it, I gasped. "What's this?" I was filled with disbelief. The paper was a filled-out divorce application. Unbelievable! What kind of person does this? Lisa, possibly out of frustration, was red-faced and teary-eyed. I, on the other hand, had become calm. I felt more resignation than anger or sadness. Then, my smartphone rang. It was from Christian. Taking a deep breath, I answered. As soon as he heard my voice, Christian began speaking cheerfully. "I've found a new wife, so we're getting a divorce, LOL." Handing me divorce papers out of the blue, what a way to say it. I replied to Christian, clearly upset. "What do you mean? Explain yourself properly. There's not much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is. I felt like everything went dark in front of me. It was more of a feeling of disgust and pity than shock. Lisa snatched the smartphone from me and yelled at Christian. What do you mean her? Are you even human? I was still in disbelief. However, I didn't feel sad or hurt. Christian's selfish behavior over time had probably numbed my feelings for him. There was a sense of liberation in me. The regrettable part was that Christian never had any feelings of gratitude or respect for our family. Seeing Lisa looking at me worriedly, I smiled at her. I'll be fine. I've been over him for a while. It's infuriating, though. Still, I was anxious. With my condition, working wouldn't be easy. Of course, I would ensure to get adequate compensation in the divorce settlement. But that alone might not be enough. Given the circumstances, I resolved to focus on what I could do moving forward. We have to make sure to get enough compensation from the divorce settlement to not struggle with living expenses. I renewed my determination, clenching my fists tightly. He's got a healthy body now, so we should get what we're entitled to, I said to Lisa, who nodded vigorously in agreement. That's right, I'm not alone. I have my lovely and dependable daughter, Lisa, by my side. 3 months after Christian left the house, an unbelievable situation occurred. I had just returned home from a hospital visit and was about to open the front door with Lisa's support when someone jumped out from a hiding spot. Shalia, help me! What should I do now? Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal. Who are you? I responded calmly. Who? It's me, Christian. At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but his voice made it clear. The words I had just spoken were deliberate. I opened the door. Now able to move without a wheelchair as my condition had improved. It would be a nuisance to have someone continue to kneel at the entrance, so I reluctantly let Christian into the house. In the living room, Lisa and I confronted Christian. What are you doing here? Christian began to speak, his forehead rubbing against the table. Please, I was wrong. I want us to get back together. Ha! The nerve you have to say that now, Lisa said before I could, echoing my thoughts. He had so easily discarded me just because he got healthy. And he had said he didn't want to take care of me. What does he want now? Just leave, please. Lisa, unable to bear it any longer, grabbed Christian's arm to make him stand up and leave. When Christian attempted to rise, he suddenly clutched his stomach and collapsed in pain. Despite how I felt about Christian, I couldn't just ignore someone in pain. I asked Lisa to bring the car around, and we took Christian to his regular hospital. In the car, Christian was sweating and groaning, holding his stomach. Upon arrival, I quickly called for a nurse, who then took him to the treatment room. While waiting in the lobby, a nurse called me into the treatment room. Christian's doctor was there and began to explain his condition. Ma'am, you've just arrived, I see. The doctor seemed unaware of my relationship with Christian. There was no point in discussing that now, so I listened to the doctor's explanation. What's his condition? The doctor spoke gravely. As I've explained to him before, there's a strong rejection reaction to the transplanted liver. Immediate hospitalization and treatment are necessary. Lisa chuckled softly in the background. He's getting what he deserves. I coughed to signal disapproval of Lisa's inappropriate comment. But I completely agreed. The doctor pretended not to hear and continued. We need to switch to a stronger immunosuppressant. This medication puts a significant strain on the kidneys. His kidney values are already poor, so using this suppressant will necessitate dialysis. I responded immediately. I see. Please do what you think is best. The doctor seemed taken aback by my quick response. Starting dialysis means being bedridden in the hospital for about 3 hours, 3 times a week. Once it begins, it's a lifelong commitment, significantly impacting one's lifestyle. Normally, one wouldn't make such a decision so quickly. But I have no involvement in Christian's life anymore. What happens to him is none of my concern. The doctor began to discuss the possibility of transplantation. It dawned on me why Christian had come. He was probably hoping for a kidney transplant from me. Seeking help from me because his condition had worsened was far too convenient. Christian should suffer the complications of liver disease and live the rest of his life on dialysis. When Lissa was out, Christian came to our house again. This time, it seems he properly rang the intercom. He was so emaciated that saying he looked haggard would be an understatement. His face was lifeless and pallid, as if he might collapse at any moment. Although I had an idea why Christian had come, I let him into the house anyway. He must have sneaked out of the hospital. Then Christian began to talk incessantly about the woman he was involved with. She was a 24-year-old coworker. She's 3 months pregnant. Christian revealed shortly after leaving our home that the pregnancy was discovered. I thought I had no feelings left for Christian, but his manner of sharing this news made me feel disgusted by him. Anyway, I've decided to go ahead and file those divorce papers we put on hold. But since I have my own life to live, you'll need to pay me a lump sum of $50,000 for the settlement, I stated firmly. It's a bit above the going rate, but considering my illness, it shouldn't be considered too high. There's no way I can pay that, Christian retorted, his face turning red with anger. Ignoring Christian's attitude, I continued. If she's someone from work, she must have known you were married. I'll also be seeking compensation from your mistress in the divorce settlement. Hey, cut the crap. Do you even know who she is? I had no idea who she was. She's the boss's daughter. And she thinks I've been divorced for years, Christian admitted, attempting to justify his deception. I was appalled by his selfishness. That's your problem. You've done enough. If you don't pay, I'll go to your company and have your wages garnished, I said sharply. Please, don't. If the boss finds out about the affair, it'll be a big problem, I thought to myself. It's already a big problem, isn't it? Staring Christian down, he timidly began to speak with a pale face. I'll figure out the money somehow. Just please don't tell the company. If the company finds out, she'll know I'm still married. It'd be cruel to her if she found out about the marriage from an affair. Sympathizing with his mistress? What about me? Christian looked taken aback, then hung his head. I'll arrange the money right away. Just keep quiet about it. I kept my stern gaze on him. Christian knelt on the floor, begging. Please, keep this quiet. I couldn't help but laugh at Christian's pitiful state. Christian explained he would borrow the $50,000 settlement from his parents and the mistress's settlement from a loan shark. As long as it didn't inconvenience me, I didn't care where the money came from, but I made sure he understood it needed to be transferred properly. We agreed he would file the divorce papers after transferring the settlement, and I made sure to get it in writing. Christian left dejectedly. He probably came to talk about a kidney transplant. But I didn't let him get to that point. By exploiting Christian's vulnerability, I managed to settle the divorce compensation without further issues. I was glad Lissa wasn't home. Witness such a mess. Being still legally his wife, I went to Christian's hospital to sign all the treatment consent forms, including for dialysis. I decided to check on Christian and found him and a young woman arguing in the common room. The woman seemed very angry. Their loud voices could be heard outside. "Weren't you supposed to be cured? What's with the hospitalization?" This must be Dina, the mistress. "Please, calm down," Christian replied weakly. "I don't want to deal with an old man in the hospital when I'm about to have a baby." Such a foul-mouthed woman. I wondered if she really was the boss's daughter. As Lissa eyed her suspiciously. "I think I know her," Lissa muttered. Dina continued to rant at Christian. "I absolutely can't handle caregiving." Christian shrank away, overwhelmed and unable to argue. "And what's this about divorce compensation?" Lissa looked at me and laughed. "I just couldn't help myself and sent a letter about the affair to the company president." Perhaps that's why Dina came storming in. "It's practically marriage fraud. He lied about being healthy. I'm the one who should be getting the divorce compensation." I couldn't help but laugh at her words. Lissa's letter might have been too much, but it was a case of reaping what one sows. A young doctor passing by struck up a conversation with Lissa. "Is that your dad in the common room?" There seemed to be a familiarity in his tone. Lissa responded with a smile. "Maybe not." I watched their exchange with a touch of amusement. After the doctor left, Lissa looked happily at me, catching my gaze and blushing slightly. Then, a nurse mentioned to me that there was laundry piling up. With a smile, I responded, "Understood," and left, pondering that Christian likely had no one to care for him during his hospital stay. On the way back from the hospital, "I might know that woman, his mistress," Lissa mentioned. "Probably a senior from high school," she speculated, recalling a senior who left school halfway through her senior year due to pregnancy. "She must have dropped out because she was pregnant," Lissa mused, tilting her head in thought. She then suggested, "Maybe the child she's carrying isn't Dad's." Lissa shared rumors that the senior had been involved in dubious activities back then. I had a hunch that the father might be someone else. Just a woman's intuition. But it felt likely. It's that intuition they say women have. After some time, the alimony from the divorce trial was paid by my in-laws. And they didn't just transfer it, they brought it in person. They said, "We've been so troubled by what our son has done, truly sorry." As my in-laws apologized, tears in their eyes, kneeling on the floor. "I will accept the alimony from the divorce trial for my sake, but I intend to have no further dealings with my son, Christian," was their stance. Christian had angered the CEO and was fired on the spot. Though Christian received severance pay, it was taken by his affair partner under the guise of alimony for the divorce trial, and after that, he went missing. My mother-in-law tearfully shared this with me. Christian has been hospitalized ever since. Due to artificial dialysis and worsening liver conditions, it seems unlikely Christian will be able to leave the hospital in the future. The alimony from the divorce trial was transferred from the company Christian worked for, probably out of shame for their daughter's scandal. It might be a form of hush money, I guess. The divorce turmoil has settled down. After a long while, peaceful days have returned to me. My lung cancer responded well to treatment, and I was recently informed by the doctor that I'm in remission. Now, regular checkups should suffice. Lissa is off to work. Right now, I'm alone at home. Looking around the empty house, this house originally belonged to my relatives. It was renovated and transferred to my name. The renovation costs came from my savings before I got married. This house is my possession. So, even after the divorce, I won't have trouble finding a place to live. As for Lissa, she recently reported that she's dating a young doctor. During her frequent hospital visits, she received advice from the doctor, and they became close. He was a kind, smiling doctor with a friendly demeanor. She plans to bring him home soon. I don't want Lissa to make the same mistakes I did. But with that doctor, she should be fine. I've lost a lot due to my illness. My marriage was a failure, too. But life still has so much more to offer. And then, the CEO of the company Christian worked for offered me a job. It must have been his way of making amends. It was an office job at a local construction company. They valued my previous work experience at another construction company. Since they said I could work from home, I accepted the offer. Having a stable income greatly reduced my anxiety about the future. I am going to be happier from now on. I don't just want to regret the past, I aim to live looking forward.